As President Biden attempts to give amnesty to more than 500,000 illegal aliens in the run-up to the election, Republican Congressman Chip Roy has proposed a measure that would use Congress's power of the purse to ban Homeland Security funds from being used to carry out Joe Biden's unconstitutional executive action. Clever idea, good policy, great example of checks and balances in our constitutional system. And it failed. It failed because 14 Republicans joined 202 Democrats to vote against it. Those Republicans are Lori Chavez DeRemer, Mario Diaz-Balart, John Duarte, Brian Fitzpatrick, Carlos Jimenez, Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon, David Joyce, Thomas Keane, Young Kim, Mike Lawler, Amada Radawagan, Maria Salazar, Michelle Steele, David Valadao. That's it. I haven't talked to those Republicans about it. Who knows? Maybe they have their reasons. I don't know. They're welcome to come on the show and explain themselves. But it seems pretty crazy to me and sad. This is why we can't have nice things. Because even something so obvious, hey, do you think the president should be able to just, with a magic wand, make 500,000, more than 500,000 illegal aliens likely on a path towards citizenship? Just give them blanket amnesty after that man's previous administration, the Obama administration, admitted that such an action would be unconstitutional. Hey, Republicans, do you think that's a good idea? Or should we use the constitutional power we have to maybe try to stop him just a little bit or at least slow him down? Nope, we can't. We can't do that. We can't do that because 14 Republicans say that even using that tiny little eensy-weensy little bit of a modicum of power to defend the Constitution and stop the Democrats' obscene historic power grab, that's just too much. We can't have that. That's why we can't have nice things. This is also why I can't stomach all the purity spiraling that we see when it comes to the relatively conservative people in the GOP. Guys like Chip Roy, guys like fill in your congressman, fill in your senator, up to and including President Trump. Do you see what we're up against? There are people, I understand, who want to criticize Trump for not being restrictionist enough on immigration, for not being quite as right-wing as you'd like him to be, not quite as rigid as perhaps you are. Okay, yeah, I get it. I sympathize. 14 Republicans can't even agree not to give Democrats 500,000 more likely future voters in the lead up to an election. That's where we are. So politics is the art of the possible. When it comes to candidates who show a decent, reasonable conservative inclination, more importantly, when we have candidates who have a hint of backbone, I don't really see a ton of backbone here among some of these other Republicans, I'm willing to take what I can get. The country has moved so far to the left. So far to the left that 14 Republicans can't say, hey, hold up 500,000 illegal aliens. We have got a long slog ahead of us. We need to take the leaders and the wins that we can when we can get them. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Drag queens are lobbying Congress for new LGBTQ rights. One of them went on CNN to demand this. Here's a little zinger, though. Here's a little surprise. The drag queen is actually a woman. Drag queens are women now, apparently. They're not, anyway, I don't know. We'll get into what that means. What we will also get into later on is the debate. Tonight is the big debate between Trump and Biden, the first of two presidential debates in 2024. It's going to be hosted on CNN. Totally different kind of debate than we've seen any of us really in our lifetimes, certainly in my lifetime. This will not be from the Commission on Presidential Debates. It'll be a whole new thing with all new sorts of rules that are probably designed to rig it against Trump. We will be covering it, so go check it out. I got some good news and I got some bad news, folks. What do you want first? The bad news is we've sold out of Sicilian Summer. My delicious candle, seasonal candle, we sold out. Now, the good news is we have other candles, such as the candle and the Wise Man candle, which is a riff on the old Lenten Smells and Bells candle, and the PSL candle, and the Old Soul candle, and all the delicious Mayflower line of candles. That's our somehow even more elevated line with these beautiful colored glass containers. They're just gorgeous. Get them while you can. Thecandleclub.com. You got to put the in there. Thecandleclub.com. They might be on the Daily Wire shop, but if you want to go straight to the source, thecandleclub.com. Speaking of immigration, I mentioned yesterday that immigration enforcement has finally apprehended 8 ISIS terrorists who crossed into our country illegally, then did kind of terroristy things in our country. Then we're talking about making bombs and committing acts of terrorism. And then finally, there was a sting in New York and LA and Philly, and they got these terrorists. What made the episode so embarrassing is we had already arrested these terrorists. When the ISIS-K terrorists crossed the southern border, we apprehended them. But because Joe Biden wants to flood the country with foreign nationals, Border Patrol had to let them go. They have to let everybody go, just about, because this is the long-term strategy for the Dems. So the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, is doing the damage control tour now, and he's going on all the left-wing news channels. But this is a lot, even for the left-wing pundits. So even he goes on Morning Joe, he goes on MSNBC, and Mika Brzezinski, even she, as bona fide a left-winger as they come, says, hey, man, we're letting ISIS into the country now. This is pretty bad, right? And the excuse from Mayorkas is, I kid you not, that there's no evidence that ISIS was planning to harm us.
The first is NBC News reporting that the Department of Homeland Security has identified over 400 immigrants who have come to the U.S. from Central Asia and elsewhere as subjects of concern, and some even affiliated potentially with an ISIS affiliated human smuggling network.
With respect to the people from Central Asia, we have no evidence that they are individuals plotting to harm the United States. That is inaccurate. It's very important to note that the safety and security of the American people are our highest priority. We screen and vet individuals at the time of encounter. If we learn of derogatory information, we take enforcement action. We are proceeding with extreme caution here in the service of the security and safety of the American people.
No, you didn't. No, you're not. You screened them. You found out that they came by way of an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling network, and then you let them go. So you're not taking this very seriously. You did learn derogatory information. Either you learned derogatory information. I love that euphemism. Derogatory. Either you learned that they're affiliated with terrorists and you did nothing about it, or you didn't learn that they're affiliated with terrorists, and because you have a blanket policy of letting any foreigner who wants to invade the country come in, then you let him in anyway. Don't forget, we're talking about 2 separate issues here. People who are smuggled in through an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling network, and those 8 ISIS terrorists who made it into the country who were just arrested. Because don't forget, the excuse Mayorkas had when the sting operation caught the ISIS terrorists was, well, look, yeah, they're ISIS terrorists. They were talking about building bombs and stuff like that. But at the time we encountered them at the border, we didn't have any derogatory information. Well, maybe you got to look a little deeper, man, because you sure got some derogatory information later on. There's no evidence that ISIS affiliates mean to do us harm. I'm pretty sure there is information about that. I think there's a lot of evidence, like the affiliation with ISIS. You know, that group that's killed a bunch of Americans and that wants to wage a war against the great Satan and establish a caliphate. And you remember that war? And then Trump got elected in part on promising to completely obliterate that group, which he did until then Trump was booted out of office and then the group came back again. Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence of that, actually. There's no evidence. It's kind of like that clip of Ben. There's that clip of Ben when he was at some school and he said, the Boy Scouts are only for boys. And some liberal student asked him, well, where does it say that? And he says, well, it's in the name Boy Scouts. An only slightly more abstract version. Where does it say that the ISIS terrorists want to do us harm? I think it's in the phrase ISIS terrorist. I think that's where it says it, actually. So then the MSNBC thing doesn't go very well. He then goes on to CNN. And he's pulling all his favorite euphemisms. I love this new euphemism, the people from Central Asia. That's our new euphemism for terrorists. Well, I think you can't say that phrase, terrorist. That's very offensive now. The new phrase is people from Central Asia. Okay. That doesn't work. He goes on CNN and then his excuse, beyond all the usual ones we've heard, is, no, you shouldn't worry about these ISIS guys getting caught. ISIS comes across our open border all the time.
Kate, every year, every single year, we encounter individuals that do indeed pose a threat to our public safety. That is not something unique to this administration. When I was the Deputy Secretary, when I was the Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, when I was a federal prosecutor in the 1990s for 12 years, we encountered individuals of concern and we take enforcement action. That's not something that is unique.
So, first excuse, oh, yeah, we let terrorists cross the border all the time. Second excuse, listen, I've worked in a lot of Democrat administrations, and in those Democrat administrations, frankly, we encourage the terrorists to come. It's an open border, but no, we take the enforcement actions that we think are appropriate and necessary. But what are the enforcement actions that the Democrats take? They encourage more illegals to cross the border. And he's trying to blur the situation here. He says, look, it's every administration. No, not really. Trump ran and was elected in large part on securing the border. And he did secure the border. In the first months of his presidency, he actually did secure the border, and illegal immigration dropped dramatically. And then the Democrats stymied him and threw up all sorts of roadblocks and did their damnedest to knock down the border wall, both physical and metaphorical, all of the laws and regulations that would stop it. And then Biden gets elected and gets rid of all of Trump's protections and actually removes pieces of the border wall because he wants these people coming across. But don't worry, ISIS terrorists cross the border all the time, especially when Democrats are in office, it would seem. It's no big deal. This happens every year, man. We're not going to stop it, but it happens. It's okay. We usually don't have that many terrorist attacks. Seems like we need to restore some balance to our political system. We need some balance of nature. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Knowles. Balance of Nature fruits and veggies is the most convenient way to get whole fruits and vegetables daily. They use an advanced cold vacuum process that encapsulates fruits and veggies into whole food supplements without sacrificing their natural antioxidants. The capsules are completely void of additives, fillers, extracts, synthetics, pesticides, or added sugar. The only thing in Balance of Nature's fruit and veggie capsules, fruit and veggies. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. That sounds miserable and certainly time-consuming. With Balance of Nature, there's never been an easier way to ensure you get your daily dose of fruits and veggies. If you want to look like all of the just vibrant, healthy people here at the Daily Wire, go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Knowles, Knowles, for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of Fiber and Spice. That is balanceofnature.com, promo code Knowles. That way you don't need to be like the hyenas here at Daily Wire, just grabbing it when the freebies come in. You can get your own right to your door, balanceofnature.com, promo code Knowles. By the way, just a little coda on the whole terrorist thing. There's a special forces group, the Special Operations Association of America, which is warning that we are now at heightened risk of a Muslim terror attack. According to the SOAA chairman, Christopher Miller, he served as acting Secretary of Defense in the Trump administration. He said in a letter that his organization was, quote, gravely concerned by the current heightened risk of terrorist attacks against targets in the United States and both U.S. and allied interests abroad. So, yeah, of course. The West has been fairly consistently fighting elements of the Muslim world for about 1,400 years now. So, that's probably going to continue for the foreseeable future. And that's especially true when you let terrorists into your country. Terrorists who are talking about building bombs and harming people. That's true. But I mention that story because of a piece of wisdom that comes to us by way of Harold Macmillan, the old conservative prime minister in the United Kingdom. Macmillan was asked, what is the greatest challenge of statecraft? What's the greatest challenge a statesman can face? And he said, events, dear boy. Events, that's the big problem. And so we don't know. And between now and November, we've got July, August, September, October. We got a lot of time for some event to take place. Is it going to be a terror attack? Is it going to be some new war? Is it going to be a new pandemic? Is it going to be, I don't know. I mean, this time in 2020, it still kind of looked like Trump would win. I know we were really getting into the throes of the COVID mania, but things just happen. And I think there are a lot of conservatives who are feeling really good right now because the polls look good for Trump. And we'll get into some of those polls in just a moment. But especially if the Democrats' backs are against a wall and that nothing seems to be working, and even their extra constitutional, strategies that are contrary to the American political tradition, like imprisoning the front runner for the GOP or the nominee now for the GOP. When that's all not working, who knows? Then they're going to be relying on luck and fate and history to intervene. And history does sometimes intervene. Speaking of scary things, a drag queen has gone on CNN to demand more rights from Congress for the LGBT LMNOP people.
I'm curious for you, first of all, what this day means to you. And second of all, have both Democrats and Republicans agreed to meet with you?
Yes, we will be meeting with both Democrats and Republicans. And I'm really excited to go speak with all of our lawmakers about the attacks that we're seeing on our LGBTQ community. It's so important to talk about and to discuss protections for our queer community. We already see so many attacks on our queer community. I already don't feel safe in my own hometown, just dressed in drag like this. And it's very scary for queer people to exist in a time where we see this kind of rhetoric being pushed by our lawmakers and the people who should care about other issues that actually affect the American people.
Okay, blah, blah, blah. We need more stuff. This is the sort of thing we hear every day of the month in June and really every day of the year, period. What makes it newsworthy is that drag queen is actually a woman. That drag queen is a woman, born a woman, remains a woman, as all people who are born women do. A woman dressed up as a man, dressed up as a woman. I believe this is what the post-structuralists would call hyper-reality, where you have the symbol of the symbol of the symbol of the symbol of the thing so removed that this woman is dressing as a caricature of a woman that doesn't really even resemble a woman, which, ironically enough, she is. That's culture, man. That's really spooky. Now, people are getting fooled by this. So some conservatives are attacking this drag queen, dressed as a drag queen, as being a man. But because, oddly enough, this is a woman who's dressing as a man, dressed as a woman, what the conservative critiques are inaccurate. And so Marjorie Greene, rightly criticized this drag queen, and all sorts of left-wing newspapers are making fun of her for it, attacking her for it. Here is, I think it's Entertainment Weekly. Female drag queen owns Marjorie Taylor Greene after politician called her a man. No idea what you're talking about. Now, if you read down in the article, it says, when reached for comment, Brigitte, the drag queen, confirms to Entertainment Weekly that she was born and is comfortable identifying as female, but that most accurately, she's a non-binary queen. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Headline just said the drag queen is female. But then in the article in the body of the article, it says that she is non-binary. But according to the LGBT LMNOP orthodoxy, the dogma, if you are non-binary, you are not a female because it means you're neither male nor female. You're some third option. So what Entertainment Weekly and the LGBT LMNOP people want to do is they want to have it both ways. They do always want to have it both ways, don't they? They want to have it all the ways. For the purposes of upending our sexual ethic and our norms and our society, this drag queen is not a woman. But for the purposes of making fun of a Republican congressman, this drag queen is a woman. But even to be a woman, according to this drag queen, is really just based on an absurd caricature of a woman advanced by men in the LGBT LMNOP movement, which is increasingly divorced from reality. Really spooky stuff. Not only can we no longer answer the question, what is a woman? But we can no longer answer the question, what is a drag queen? Because we are so removed. I had someone on the show some years ago who was by Wokel Distance, really, really good Twitter account. And he's a big fan of Baudrillard, a philosopher and writer who really advanced this concept of hyper-reality. And the example that Wokel Distance used was a strawberry. And you have a strawberry, and then you decide to make strawberry jam. And then you've got strawberry jam, and you like it so much, you decide to condense that flavor even more, and you make strawberry ice cream. And then you make that flavor, you get it down to its essence even more, you make a strawberry Jolly Rancher. And then you get that flavor even more down to its essence, and you make a strawberry Jolly Rancher soda. But the strawberry Jolly Rancher soda doesn't really taste like a strawberry. It's been so removed through symbolism and artifice that you've got something really totally different. That's what's happened to this woman. That is what's happening to sex and gender roles broadly because of this constant process of imitation and caricature, because of this constant remove from nature and the natural law and the behaviors that are conducive to human flourishing, according to the order of nature and certainly according to the order of grace. Because we're now so far removed from that, this woman, she thinks she's a they, them. She thinks she's a man. She thinks she's a drag queen. And a drag queen, all of a sudden, which was previously a man who dresses as a woman, can also be a woman dressed as a male caricature of a woman. And if you raise any questions about it, people are going to make fun of you. What should we really be laughing at here? I wonder. Okay, now, we were just speaking of Jolly Ranchers. I want to talk to you about Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com, use promo code Knowles. What better way to celebrate America's birthday than with 100% American meat? Goodranchers.com is the #1 place to get 100% American meat for this uniquely American holiday. Celebrate the sweet taste of freedom with savory meats conveniently delivered right to your door. Whether you're hosting a backyard barbecue, a poolside party, or a beach bonfire, Good Ranchers has you covered. I've said it before. I will say it again. It has been true since day one of this company launching. Good Ranchers is the best meat that you are going to get at a price that is shockingly lower than all the other bad meat that you can get. It somehow the service gets better and better and better, and they include all sorts of freebies and discounts. I don't know how they do it, but take advantage while you can. Right now, you can save on Good Ranchers meat like never before. Subscribe to any Good Ranchers box. Get $100 off plus free smoked brats for a year. How do they do it? I have no idea. My listeners can get this special offer by going to goodranchers.com, promo code Knowles. This is more than just a great deal. This is a chance to celebrate America by supporting American family farms and enjoying the highest quality American meat. Goodranchers.com. Subscribe to any of their custom curated boxes. You will get that delicious 100% American beef, chicken, pork, or wild-caught seafood. And you get $100 off and free brats for a year. Goodranchers.com, promo code Knowles. Speaking of the LGBT LMNOP stuff, there is a big sign posted at an elementary school in California. And it says, now, let's turn to some good news. Nate Silver, one of, if not the most famous political statisticians and pollsters out there, Nate Silver is predicting that Donald Trump will win the presidency. He's predicting that Trump will win with a 65.7% likelihood. He gives Biden only about a 1 in 3 chance of winning the presidency. And he breaks it down in electoral college probability, which is all that matters. That's how we choose the president. And popular vote probability and predicted electoral votes and predicted popular vote share and, on and on. Notable that even when it comes to the popular vote, which gives Democrats an advantage, Trump and Biden are pretty close. Nate Silver puts it at 51 Biden, 49 Trump. But when you get to the electoral college, which is the system that we actually have in our constitutional republic, such as it is, he says Trump far and away the favorite to win. Now, you might be confused because if you're a political nerd and you follow these polls, you might say, hold on, I was reading the 538 poll, and 538, that's Nate Silver's polling outlet and statistics outlet. 538 says that Biden is the favorite to win. Right. Nate Silver was either booted out of or left 538 last year. So Nate Silver's on his own. What matters is when you're trying to analyze what the top pollsters have to say about things is not what Nate Silver's old outlet says, it's what Nate Silver says. So the question is Nate Silver right? Well, let's just look at his track record. 2008, that's when Silver came onto the screen. His final forecast for the election accurately predicted the winner of 49 out of 50 states. The one state he got wrong was Indiana. Other than that, Silver was 100% right. A couple years later, 2010, of 37 gubernatorial races, Silver correctly predicted the winner of 36. 36 out of 37, pretty good. When it comes to the Senate races, he correctly predicted the winner in 34 out of 37 races. That's very impressive. 2012, Nate Silver's model correctly predicted the winner of every single state in the country and the District of Columbia. Very good record. 2016. In 2016, Nate Silver predicted Hillary would win. However, his final prediction gave Hillary a much lower chance of winning than any of the other outlets out there. His final prediction said that Hillary had a 71% chance of winning. Other major forecasters predicted that Clinton had an 85 to 99% chance of winning. So even there, you'd say, okay, Nate Silver got it wrong, but he got it way less wrong than all of the other pollsters. Then in 2020, they predicted, Silver and his crew predicted that Biden had an 89% chance of winning, and he only missed Florida, North Carolina, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District in his predictions. Otherwise, he got it totally right. So this is pretty good news. If you follow the polls, and not just the polls that this partisan media outlet wants to push or that partisan media outlet wants to push, but if you actually examine the pollsters by their records, Trump's sitting pretty right now. It's another knock for the Democrats. They weren't able to boot him out in the primary. They weren't able to convince him not to run at all. They weren't able to kick him off of the ballot, which is what they were trying to do. They weren't able to turn the public against him with all the various hoaxes. That didn't work. They weren't able to put him into prison yet. I mean, I guess they're trying to do that. We'll see when the sentencing comes up in a couple of weeks. 3 out of those 4 cases where they're prosecuting him, they're going to be pushed after it matters in the election. And now the polls look like Trump's the favorite to win by far. If you're a Democrat, what do you do then? I think the last 2 options are you banish him to St. Helena or you assassinate him. That's pretty much it. Neither of which would be good. Now, even though it looks good for Trump, there is at least one Republican who is defecting. There's a big theme of today's show, is Squish Republicans defecting. And the one Republican who has now endorsed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that would be Adam Kinzinger. You remember him? He's the guy who's a member of Congress who said he was a Republican, but he was effectively a Democrat, and he served along with Liz Cheney on the otherwise entirely Democrat January 6th Commission. And he's the kind of Republican who supports Republican things until it matters, until the crucial votes where it actually requires some political courage and backbone. And then he always squishes to the libs. So now he's just come out fully and endorsed Biden. And the press release from the Biden campaign is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger endorses President Biden and Vice President Harris. That is fake news. That is a fake news headline. At the very least, because Kinzinger is not a congressman. He got booted out of Congress because Republicans rightly recognized he's a rat, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and he's not a Republican. So the first 2 words of that headline are fake news. He's practically speaking not a Republican, and he's just literally not a congressman. But of course he's endorsing Biden. He has to endorse Biden because the never Trump position has always been incoherent. I understand why some people were attracted to the Never Trump movement, because Trump's kind of eccentric and Trump's mean to some people and he ruffled a lot of feathers and he irritated certain friends of this interest or that political coalition, or that he upended the Republican coalition. I get it. And some people took that personally. It's like that, man, I took that very personally. Oh, some people did take it personally. But politics is not supposed to be about personal matters. It's supposed to be about public matters. So what was the argument to vote for Hillary over Trump? Well, Trump's mean and he's a jerk and I hate him and maybe he'll be liberal. Turns out he wasn't a liberal president. He was the most conservative president of our lifetimes. But maybe, who knows? We don't know. It's 2016. We don't know. Maybe. But what's the argument for voting for Hillary, who you know is pretty much the devil, over Trump? There's no argument other than personal interest. Well, Trump weakens my position in the Republican Party or the conservative movement or the Congress or whatever. There was a third option in 2016, that guy Egg McMuffin, the former CIA House Republican flack who ran and was a protest vote. But again, what's the argument for throwing away your vote when the stakes are so high? You got Trump or Clinton. It never made sense. Certainly didn't make sense in 2020. And it especially doesn't make sense now. The only reason to be never Trump now is because you're petty, navel-gazing, putting your own personal interests over the public good. You're vindictive, you're butthurt, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. Ironically, it's all the things that they accuse Trump of being and doing. Ironically, the position of Adam Kinzinger, the reason that you're going to take your ball and go home and go vote for Joe Biden, who wants to flood our country with illegal aliens, stomp all over our Constitution, and kill every baby he can see, and it's the kids that make it through. If you're a principled conservative, you're a Republican, the only reason to do it is because you're just so petty and vindictive and narcissistic that you can't tolerate that someone that you personally don't like is the leader of the Republican Party. All the things they accuse Trump of being, it's projection, not only among the Democrats, but among the fake Republicans too, who now increasingly are just revealing themselves to be Democrats. You got to brace yourselves for an evening of unparalleled political insight. Tonight, DailyWire Backstage goes live with our coverage of the presidential debate. You do not want to miss a moment. DailyWire Plus is simulcasting the debate. We are providing the commentary you won't hear anywhere else. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, Jeremy Boring, whatever. I'm sure the guys will say something. But yours truly is going to be there too. Okay, so forget about the first part. You get to see your absolute favorite podcaster. We will all attempt to make sense of this craziness and tell you what it means for the future of America. The pre-show commences at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by a live simulcast of the presidential debate. When the dust settles, stick around for our exclusive post-show autopsy. The stage is set. The players are ready. Watch DailyWire Backstage live, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, dailywire.com. My favorite comment yesterday is Laura Kate Baker, 4925, says, I can't stand being lied to. I love this comment because I think that represents the primary political motivations of a lot of people. A lot of people who maybe aren't the biggest political nerds. They're not the most involved. They're doing other things. They got other stuff going on in their lives. But they really don't like being lied to. Being lied to is deeply offensive. It carries with it a great lack of respect. It's an insult to one's intelligence. It's an insult to one's integrity and dignity. It's just really nasty. And when voters sit there and they see someone like a Mayorkas come out and say, there's no evidence that ISIS wants to hurt you. Oh, no, come on. Come on, it's no big deal that we're letting ISIS terrorists into the country. That's very offensive to people. When Joe Biden floods the country with more foreign nationals, illegal foreign nationals, than any president ever in history by a country mile, and then he says, no, I'm not doing that. We are enforcing the law. We are enforcing the border. That's very offensive to people, especially people who maybe know someone who's been the victim of a crime by an illegal alien. Maybe someone who knows someone who's been injured or has died from all the illegal drugs that are pouring across the border. That's very, very offensive. You don't need to know that much about the geopolitics of Ukraine and Iran and this and that. You don't need to know much about the Federal Reserve and interest rates and how that affects the economy and how spending affects inflation. You don't need to know that lying is really, really offensive and annoying and could be enough to sway some votes. Now, speaking of the never Trump position, this is apparently the position of the CIA. There's a congressional report out, House Judiciary just released it, that the CIA interfered in the 2020 election. In other news, dogs bark, fish swim, birds fly. Yeah, I'm grateful to the Congress and House Judiciary for releasing this. I'm very grateful. I don't mean to be glib about it, because you know that the libs are going to keep lying to us and saying, no, the CIA, the intelligence community, didn't interfere in the election. So it's very important, actually, that an authoritative body like a congressional committee can go out and say, no, here's the report, here are the facts, the CIA did interfere, because that confirms for us something that we already knew. I mean, I guess that's why I'm kind of laughing about it, is we already knew the CIA and the intelligence community interfered in 2020. Why? Because they released that long letter. They released a letter signed by 51 ex-spies in 2020 saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. The Hunter Biden laptop story, which we now know the federal government has admitted was totally legit. Hunter Biden laptop was real. It did include evidence of lots of crimes, some of which, the least of which, Hunter Biden is now being prosecuted for. The Hunter Biden laptop story comes out. The intelligence community with all these ex-spies come out. They say it's fake news, Russian disinformation. The big social media platforms then, under pressure from the intelligence community, limit the reach of that story, the public reach and the private reach. They prevent people, in some cases, from even privately messaging the story. Joe Biden then cites that story during the presidential debate with Trump to push the story out of the news. The story, which after the 2020 election, a poll was conducted that showed that 12% of Biden voters would have not voted for Biden had they known that the Hunter Biden laptop story was real or had they heard about it at all. So is that it? Is that all there is to it? Well, some ex-spies signed a letter. That's not the fault of the intelligence community necessarily, even though the IC did put some pressure on the big tech companies. Well, that's not it, right? No. Well, what Congress has uncovered is that high-ranking CIA officials, up to and including then CIA Director Gina Haspel, were aware of the Hunter Biden laptop statement prior to its approval. Why? Because when spies want to go around mouthing off to the press, they need to go through something called the Pre-Publication Classification Review Board, the PCRB, which then sends this statement to the CIA's then Chief Operating Officer, Andrew McCridis, who then informed the then director of the CIA, Haspel, or then Deputy Director Vaughn Frederick Bishop, that the statement would soon be published. The CIA leadership, the active CIA leadership at the very top, had the opportunity to slow this down because it was fake news and it was obviously agency interference in the political process, but they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. And by not doing that, the CIA, the active CIA, co-signed it. Furthermore, some of the ex-spies on the list weren't just ex-spies, like Michael Morell, who was on active contract with the CIA at the time that he signed that letter. And after that letter came out, we now know for a fact CIA employees internally expressed concern that this would compromise the agency, that this was an improper interference by the CIA into the political process, and that it would not be, quote, helpful to the agency in the long run. Okay, we already knew this. It's important to see this spelled out. It's kind of like the Snopes story. I mentioned this, I think, yesterday on the show. Donald Trump, after the Charlottesville march, he comes out and he says, look, there are fine people on both sides of this debate over the whether or not to take down statues of people like Robert E. Lee. And we should respect that, and we should respect history. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists who should be condemned totally. That was Trump's statement verbatim. And the media lied about that. And they said, no, Trump called Nazis very fine people at Charlottesville. And then Joe Biden launched his presidential campaign on that false claim. And then 7 years later, Snopes admitted, okay, yeah, I guess we in the liberal media lied about it. We, Snopes, as an example and emblem of the liberal media, yeah, okay, I guess we could have fact-checked this 7 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, but now 7 years later, people forget about it. We'll admit, yeah, you guys were right, and we all lied, either by omission or directly. And they'll do that. In 7 years, you'll hear all the lies that they're telling now. So They'll admit that those are lies in 7 years when it no longer matters. So it's important to establish that for the record, because at a certain point, when they all just keep lying to you all the time, and CNN, and the New York Times, out of the CIA, at a certain point, the only rational course of action is to stop believing them. And you know that there's going to be a deluge of propaganda coming over the next 5 months from the media, probably from the intelligence community too. Good to prepare yourself now. Get it on the record. Take it with a big grain of salt. Now, speaking of attacks from the liberal establishment on right-wingers all around the world, there's an attack. I wanted to get to this yesterday. I'm glad we have a little bit of time today. In the UK elections, where you're seeing a right-wing wave all over Europe in the European elections, and that we'll maybe see if that continues on in the national elections throughout Europe and the United Kingdom. Nigel Farage right now looks like he's going to upend the oldest continuously running political party in the world, the Tories, and he's going to have a real right-wing party, Reform UK, come out. So now the liberal media, they're all attacking him with everything they got. They're accusing him of something that we've heard bandied about constantly for the last 8 years. They're accusing Nigel of being pro-Putin. And here's why.
On a tweet, it was a consequence of EU and NATO expansion. Is that a judgment you stand by?
Right. I'll tell you what you don't know. I stood up in the European Parliament in 2014 and I said, and I quote, "There will be a war in Ukraine." Why did I say that? It was obvious to me that the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man a reason to his Russian people to say they're coming for us again and to go to war.
But you were echoing him.
Sorry?
You were echoing him. That's what Putin says.
No. Sorry, I've been saying this actually since the 1990s. Ever since the fall of the wall. But hang on a second. We've provoked this war. Of course it's his fault. He's used what we've done as an excuse.
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen.
What Nigel just said here is 100% correct. And this interviewer on the BBC says, "You're saying that the West acted foolishly and recklessly in the lead up to the war of Ukraine and might have helped bring it about." Yes, that's correct. Well, that's what Putin's saying. Yeah. Putin drinks water too. That means everybody who drinks water, Hitler liked his dog. Does that mean everyone who likes their dog is doing something wicked? No. That opinion that the West and NATO acted recklessly and antagonized Russia needlessly, and that helped bring about this war in Ukraine, is not just an opinion held by the radical far right. That's an opinion held by people like Henry Kissinger, a rather moderate Republican who's been one of the leading figures in foreign policy until his recent death for well over half a century. That's the opinion of people like Daniel Patrick Moynihan. That's the opinion of people like Sam Nunn. That's the people, so including some Democrats. That's the opinion of people like George Kennan, who wrote the long telegram that crafted the very beginning of American Cold War strategy. That's just common sense, man. That's what it is. But this is the line. If you disagree with the liberal establishment just constantly going in, acting in an aggressive way, toppling countries. NATO's supposed to be a defensive alliance, but sometimes it acts in a not so defensive way, and it actually goes in and is an offensive alliance, which then if you're Vladimir Putin, you say, okay, well, if they're coming into Ukraine, that's an unacceptable security risk on my border. And if NATO is now saying, actually, buffer states serve no purpose whatsoever in geopolitics, and we just need to conquer everything, that's a reckless and rash position. And that is something that the liberal establishment can't tolerate. That kind of common sense, which is extremely popular. I think that's probably the most popular position throughout, not just the Anglosphere, but throughout the West. They can't tolerate that because you're saying, no, there ought to be some limits to the conquest of liberalism. Not going to tolerate that. So they're going to lie. It's an old, tired attack. We're seeing a lot of the same old, tired attacks. And they don't seem to be working very well. So if the rhetoric isn't working, if the liberals aren't doing a good job of persuading people, the only option is to use force. We'll see if they end up doing that. We'll see how persuasive Joe Biden is tonight at the debate. Today is Theology Thursday. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.